Hola, mi gente. On behalf of ID Studio and The Tank, I'd like to welcome you to this lush conversation with a group of outstanding immigrant artists as we celebrate Immigrant Heritage Month. We will explore those labels, immigrant and artist, what they mean to each of them and to society at large. And we hope to leave you with more answers than questions, inspired and feeling like your horizons have expanded in this hour. I hope you all had a chance to watch the streaming of the play Los Niños Perdidos, Lost Children, a Piece in 20 Questions, right before this. As Megan Finn, executive director of the TAG, stated during last night's panel, the play maps out very clearly the experience of being a child, a minor seeking asylum in the United States. So if you want to better understand that complicated and painful process that children are going through, I invite you to catch the piece. And I'd like to take a moment to thank Valeria Luiselli, author of the book Tell Me How It Ends, an essay in 40 questions, from which our play is adapted. Germán Jaramillo, director of the play and artistic director of ID Studio Theater. Sandra Gumucio, the performer. Unidad Latina en Acción for their support, and the migrant youth members of their community who lend their voices to the piece, and to the rest of the creative team. And now I'd like to welcome our panelists and tell you a little bit about them. I'll start with Montserrat Vargas. If you saw the piece, or if you've seen the images for the play, she's the wonderful artist who created that collage with images of immigration. She has facilitated theater workshops at Immigrant Movement International and Make the Road New York in Corona, Queens. And for almost 10 years, she has worked in the theater as a performer and offstage as assistant director and creating immersive art installation performances. And one of her passions is to work in special education settings, guiding students into thinking visibly through different mediums. In her work, Montserrat explores the contemporary perspective of women immigrants, mental health, and trauma. And she's working on a few projects that I hope she will tell us about. Mujeres Stitchers, La Mordida Project, and Mind the Pap. And then we have Dauris Martinez, who's a visual artist born in the Dominican Republic, who migrated to New York City when he was 7. In high school, he began reading books on alchemy, spirituality, and the occult. And drawn by the magical aspects and symbolism, he began exploring ways of incorporating spirituality in his work. Last year, he spent the last semester of college forced to work from home due to the pandemic, like all of us. And during this time, he focused on using the word pájaro as a guiding force for his work, seeking to render a word that is often in certain communities used as an insult harmless. And Rocio Mendez is an award-winning actor, fight and intimacy director, and a proud New Yorker committed to building confidence in brown and Black girls through storytelling. Rocio has done multiple independent films showcasing their talents in martial arts and comedy, and has worked with a range of theaters nationally, including Atlantic Theater Company, Rattlestick Playwrights Theater, and Classical Theater of Harlem, among many. She has been nominated for multiple awards they have been nominated for multiple awards for their work in first in choreography and movement. And Rocio is a team member of Uncle Dave's Fight House, a collective of fight intimacy movement directors serving theater, film, and educational institutions. And Rocio's latest role is as co-host of the podcast Rocio and Mercedes, with the awesome tagline, Amplifying the Afro in Afro-Dominican. The podcast was inspired by recent BLM events and explores Blackness in the Dominican community from a place of love and celebration and what it means to be Dominican American. And lastly, Carlo Alban has been acting in theater, film, and television for over 30 years. He has appeared on television shows ranging from Sesame Street to Prison Break, and in films such as 21 Grams, Margaret, Whip It, and Mile 22. As a writer, he developed his solo show, Intrigulis, dealing with his experience growing up as an undocumented immigrant with Labyrinth Theater Company. He originated the role of Oscar in Lynn Nottage's Pulitzer Prize-winning Sweat, for which he received a 2017 Theater World Award for an outstanding Broadway debut. Other favorites include Jose Rivera's references to Salvador Dali Make Me Hot, the world premiere of Octavio Solis's Lydia, and Bruce Norris's A Parallelogram. Carlo is a member of Labyrinth Theater Company. Thank you, everyone, for being here. That was a lot. But in a really wonderful way, I'm honored. I was trying to move through it quickly, but I also wanted to honor all of, or some of the wonderful things that you've done. And I'm really, really grateful that you chose to spend a beautiful Friday summer night here talking about this. So I'll start by asking you and asking our audience if they knew that June is Immigrant Heritage Month. Did y'all know that?
I didn't.
You did?
I did. I was aware, but mainly because of social media.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yes, I was.
Yeah. I think most people don't know that. It's fairly recent, and there was a proclamation this month from President Biden, National Immigrant Heritage Month. And it's interesting because in the proclamation, he mentions the role of immigrants in this country, but there's no mention of artists. There's a mention of innovators, but not artists. And I thought that was interesting. And so I am going to start asking you about your experience as an immigrant and as an artist. If you define yourself that way, which is why you're here, or if you have issues with the label, I'd like to hear that too. But yeah, we'll start there, and we'll start with Carlo.
So what? Okay, what exactly is the question?
What is your experience? If you can give us just a little bit of a background of your experience as an immigrant and as an artist.
Right. So I guess the reason I'm here is because this was not in my bio. I should have put it in there. I moved to this country when I was 7 years old with my family, my parents and my brother, from Ecuador. And we came on a tourist visa and overstayed. And so we were undocumented. It took 12 years for us to get our green cards, which we applied for right away, but that process took 12 years. And in the meantime, we grew up here. We went to school. We did everything that every other kid did. We were just undocumented. And when I was, before I was a teenager, when I was a child still, I kind of fell into acting by accident. And it led to opportunities that eventually landed me on a TV show, which was Sesame Street. But I was still undocumented when I started working on that show. So I worked on that TV show for 5 years while I was undocumented, which was really the beginning of my career. It was the beginning of everything for me. And it was, I wasn't, I was a child, and it's difficult to be a child actor, and it's difficult to be undocumented as a child. And so those two things, I think created a pretty powerful effect on my brain. So I think it affected me to this day. I can't disassociate those two things from my identity, because the beginnings of me as expressing myself as an actor were so closely tied to me being undocumented and having that experience of feeling like an outsider. And even though I was on a TV show and having all these great opportunities, still feeling like I didn't belong there. Feeling like, what is that term? Imposter syndrome.
Imposter, yeah.
It just created a really strong sense of that in my brain, which lasts to this day. And so those two identities are tied together. But I also believe that because that experience was so strong for me developmentally, the best work that I have done as an artist, and all of my work as an actor now doesn't necessarily focus on being an immigrant, but every single thing that I've done over the years that I have been proud of, that I've been felt really, really connected to, and felt that I was doing my best work, uh, was because of that experience that I had. It's because they resonated with the most internal, personal part of my identity, or one of the most. And so I know that it's one of the deepest parts of me, and I can't separate those two things. And I'm really interested to hear from everybody else also what, the marriage of those two things, and how kind of being an immigrant has informed your artistic journey, and identity in that way. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Monsa, do you want to talk to us? Because I know your experience is a little bit different. So I'd love to hear, yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you for making this happen.
Mhm.
I think that is kind of like a very beautiful journey to see such a powerful piece. And then I have a talk about immigration. I really love it. Thank you to the Tank and to ID Studio Theater. So yeah, I had a different experience. I think at the beginning, or I arrived to United States when I was like 22, 23, I think. And I remember arriving to New York. I didn't know anybody. I didn't want to study English in high school, so I was very bad in my English. I remember very shy. And I think that at the beginning, I just received really bad advice, and I was really kind of put into the idea that I have to blend, and that I have to try to really sound English, trying to find theater that I can work on. But the theater that I saw, it wasn't the theater that I did in Chile. In Chile, so I was very conflicted, and I think that I was a little bit lost for a few years until I guess that my body or my gut start functioning, and then I start sharing that I write poetry. I start sharing that I embroider, and then all this kind of thing start coming, and I guess that my gut instinct start looking for jobs and for situations that align my body, my mind, my spirit, my moral, and my vision. And I remember that I told you I don't know when I talked to you, Sandy, but I think that the other day I had a meeting with one of my mentors, Mindy from the BCM project. And I remember talking with her and say okay, I have to back up because I feel that I cannot explain any of the projects that I'm working right now without telling you I'm a woman, I'm an immigrant, I am a Latina, I was in the process of being undocumented, and I'm also living with the consequences of being a child who was sexually molested. So all those situations have been, I think, that narrate or kind of make me what I am now, and in what place I'm trying to make the type of art that I'm trying to make. I know that I'm in a current and obviously trying to study and trying to dismantle all the myths and biases that as a Latina we had. I remember telling you before that I thought the Latina, when I arrived here to New York, I thought Latina was like the woman, the models that you see in in Sábado Gigante, Don Francisco. I was like, Latina, that is the Latina, the image of a Latina that I imagine. And then I guess that, I think that to understand what I do and to keep myself into this line of work, I do have to remind myself that I'm an immigrant, and that I will not let capitalism or anything like that take that away from me. Like it's a huge part of what I am right now.
Yeah, I know your work, so it's interesting because Carlo was talking about coming to this country. And did you do any acting back in Ecuador, Carlo?
No.
No, you found that here.
Yeah.
And for you, you came from Chile, Montserrat, a fully formed artist, and then going through this process, or you were already trained,
Yeah.
coming here and trying to figure out where you fit in. And I know from your story and your experiences that coming here actually gave you an artistic voice to explore things from your past back home. So it's really interesting because I feel that you as an artist, as an immigrant, and someone who went through sexual abuse in childhood, you have channeled all of that into your work here, which perhaps you were not doing that back home in Chile. And I want to go back to why that may be, but I want to go to Dowdy's and hear about you coming here when you were 7.
Yeah, so my parents brought me here when I was 7. Yeah, I mean, their idea was to like live out the American dream for as long as I can remember. Like, I mean, I can't remember much, but just kind of like living in an education setting. Uh, I remember it very clearly. My dad one time said like, "Oh, whenever you're home, like don't ever speak Spanish," because he wanted this idea that like we would learn English and just like become Americanized in a sense. So for a very long time, it's just been like school, school, school. Um, and then entering college, it was like I was able to like express myself a lot more freely. I wanted to do painting, which is where the art came in. Um, Eventually, it turned into graphic design, like the merging kind of like technology and art. Um, and I was studying in college of Staten Island. So I've always had this desire of kind of always migrating in a sense. Like going from place to place, and then the discomfort of not knowing anything and having to like discover this new space has always made me kind of learn a lot more about myself. um yeah, and I was going to college with Staten Island, commuting like 6 hours a day back and forth just to like just make it to school. um Eventually that became too much, like 2 years in, and then I transferred to Lehman College, which is where like um I found like my family there. I found like everything that I was looking for. um I think in a sense, going to college with Staten Island, I was trying to like escape home, but I think home was everything that I was looking for. So I was uncomfortable in college with Staten Island because my people weren't there. And then going back to to Lehman College, my full of my people. Um, so I think it helped me a lot to realize that I am an artist. I think still desiring to like study graphic design, it became too kind of like redundant in a sense. And then I just wanted to become a fine artist. Yeah.
Going back to Carlo and what Carlo said, and Musa touched on this a little bit. So and Carlo brought this up before at the panel. Can you separate? Are you an immigrant artist, or the two can exist separately?
No, they could not. I think it's for me, it's constantly there. I can't escape the fact that I speak two languages. I can't escape the fact that I come from the Dominican Republic. I can't, like, there's no way of separating the two. For me, it's mainly like, I think the way I tend to incorporate my Latin identity, it's usually through language. Um, I think I also use my body as a form of representing the whole, in a sense, my whole Latinx identity, in a sense. Um, yeah, but usually I use language and my body to kind of
Yeah.
incorporate
To
that, I guess.
express your identity. Yeah.
Yes.
I want to go to Rocio because I know your experience is different, and so I saved it for last. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, my experience is different. Is that I was born here from immigrant parents, so I'm first generation, and a little bit just to the interesting story about my mother, Zenaida Mendez, was she had family here when she was growing up in Dominican Republic. And when she came here one summer as a teenager, she just never went back. So it was a kind of a surprise. And it had ties to the United States invading Dominican Republic back in the day, I believe in the early 60s. I thought that was really funny that she was like, I had no idea I was not going to go back. I just ended up staying in New York. It was crazy. But I guess I want to say, as an artist, I think because I'm first generation, I actually did try to separate being of immigrant parents with my artistry for a long time. And I think it just never worked because I tried to separate and I realized it wasn't really going anywhere or connecting to my authentic self. And then as I got older, I realized, oh, no, I need to like get with the program and really come from a place of being Afro-Dominican in my work. And that turned into a crazy, really confusing and sad point for me because there was no Afro-Latinx representation in the theater or the media or TV or film. So it was kind of a weird identity crisis of like, for example, Carlo will probably feel me on this one. Like I have representation now, but I would have to submit myself to all this work and it would say, Hispanic female or Latin female, and I would never be called in for those roles that I knew I was perfect for because that's what I am. But then getting booked in African American roles and although I'm Black and totally identify with my Blackness, still feeling a little bit off with not 100% connecting to that. So now it's about essentially building my own work and having conversations. That's why I started the podcast, Rocio Mercedes, to start conversations and to get more representation out there so that I can, and other Afro-Latinx people can hopefully feel more empowered to represent themselves in everything. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and this really resonates for me as someone who identifies as Black and Latina and woman, but I was not born here. And as all of y'all have heard, I have an accent, right? Especially when I'm excited, like right now, I'm talking quickly. And so for so long, and like you, Monse, my mom put me in English classes when we lived in Dominican Republic, but I was painfully shy. And I didn't want to do it. And so every day I would get out of class and stick the book under the seat in the car. And then when she would bring me back to class, like I would never look at it. And I would sit in class and like daydream. I didn't learn any English. I was failing. And so I came here and it was like, oh my God, I got to learn English. And not only do I have to learn English, but like I got to get rid of this accent. Right. And so I would go in for auditions and I would literally get told you're too Black for certain things that ask for a Latinx character. And then I would get told other things. So I never fit in anywhere. And so what I'm getting at is, what have you found as an artist that you've given up or you've been forced to give up in the process of, if you tried to assimilate at some point, like I did, being very honest, or just in the process of survival, what do you feel yourself sacrificing, having this identity that is of two places, whether you were born or there or not, culturally, your inner landscape is different from what, mainstream makes us believe America looks like.
I feel like I need to breathe a little bit with what you sent to us. I think that I resonate a lot with this idea of when I passed through that, also the process of feeling and being undocumented and an immigrant. I totally agree, and I connect with that idea that you don't forget that, and you navigate your daily life feeling that you're in risk. And that feeling is super difficult. I don't have any other word to say, but it's very hard to actually explain. Maybe now that I've been like more into like studying neuropsychology and science, I will say, yeah, it's like being in a state of alarm constantly. But when you say that you are divided in two, or that we are divided in two, actually, the other day I was thinking, I'm actually in three places, because now I'm trying to make a family here. And my husband is also an immigrant. So there is another poetic into these worlds, right? And I think that I just read Broken Language. That is a book by Kiara, I will get back to you with the name. But
Alegría, where is?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And she mentioned this beautiful part that it says that los altares, like this kind of corner where you have your santos and las velas, the candles and the plants and everything, and remind her of Duchamp. I think that lately I've been really thinking and trying to make a peace with the idea that I could maybe find a way of making my own home wherever I have to go, because I actually have to move from the pandemic because of the pandemic. But wherever I go, I can bring my home. I can bring things that make me feel that I belong. So I had a plant that is like helecho, the fern plant, that is exactly the same plant that I grew up in Chile, that my mom had a lot in our house. So little details like that. I was talking that maybe it sounds very obsessive, maybe not, but I've been trying to really trying to make a peace and not feel so detached or annihilated of my own body and identity that I'm trying to make right now. Maybe also it's a survival instinct, right? While I'm working into immigration topics through my art and trying to bring community. Maybe not, who knows? But I just feel that I'm trying to make something new here.
Yeah. It reminds me of what Dauris was saying about a constant state of migration, even within your own city, and looking for what's home. And I wonder, more specifically, if that's something you lose or gain, this sense of, I have to create home wherever I go. I don't know. I'd love to hear if there's something, Rocio, Carlo, Dauris, that you feel like you gain or you gave up, or what is home? That's something we had talked about, right? Like, where is home?
I mean, I personally think that there is a weird kind of like third state where you exist in. And for me, it's definitely been about like not necessarily forgetting, but like mixing the best parts of both worlds and creating this new world, this new reality where all these things can exist, and then like all these things that I've been told that I can't or can't be, like, can exist all together. So usually, like, for me, it's about creating spaces where I can live authentically. And I think for me, it's usually seeking spaces where I feel like I can be completely myself. Yeah.
I think to bounce off of that a little bit, I do think that feeling of never feeling in one place, of this constant state of migration, it's hard. I'm not going to say it's not hard. It's hard. It's hard to carry that with you. But I think it's also a little bit of a superpower. I do. And I think that where I found home, it's like you have to constantly be finding it, right? But where I found home is in the communities that I've become a part of. It's in the, because of the nature of my work, they're theater communities for the most part. And so, or artistic communities, it's in the communities that I've become a part of. And sometimes I forget, I forget. And it's like, I lose myself for a little while. It's like I walk away, because being a member of a community comes with a lot of other things, that you kind of have to deal with. And so I have a tendency to sometimes kind of pull away from that, and I have to remind myself, and it happens every time I walk back into a community or meet a new community. It's a revelation to me, it's a revelation, and it's a reminder of like, oh right, this is where I belong right now. Like, this is it, this right now, everything is in sync and in flow. And I'm going to sit here for a while. And when it's time to move on, then it's time to move on. And I may come back or I may not, But, and I think also that has to do with a lot of the nature of my work as an artist. It's that we go from place to place to place, from project to project to project. I don't sit here. I'm not going to the office 9 to 5 every day. I'm not doing that. So, but I do think, again, it's like my identity as an immigrant is tied to that. And as an artist, it's tied to that. I have been in a constant state of migration since I was a child. Makes sense?
Yeah. No, thank you for that. I can relate to that, and I think community, it's such a big part of this. I think as artists, as an immigrant artist, I think community. I never knew I needed community until I moved to this city, and then I've been told that I'm obsessed with community, but it's because community is survival.
Yeah.
I grew up in an environment, just briefly, where when we migrated, it was just my mother and I, and there was nobody around us, right? And so I went from being in a neighborhood where I knew everybody to suddenly being isolated and being a latchkey kid. And so it's interesting because when I moved to New York City, it became all about creating community everywhere I go. And so I think, thank you for that, because I do think it is a superpower, and it's something that we're able to do. And sometimes we forget that we have that superpower to create those bridges, and it has to do, I think a lot of it has to do with our culture, right? And the Monse earlier talked about capitalism, but this idea, right? Like, there's a mentality, I feel like, where we all come from, and as immigrants, that you got to uplift everyone, right? If I'm going up, I got to hold your hand and pull everybody up, right?
Yeah.
But Rocio, I'd love to hear from you on this question of what you've gained or lost, or what is home.
Yeah, I think what is cool and what I've gained in terms of being an artist and being particularly a fight and intimacy director in this like sort of regional New York City theater world. I'm proud that I'm kind of the first in a lot of this as an Afro Latina, which is really cool. But what I am struggling with, and that you've been talking about, is community. I don't really have one because I kind of.
You just found one.
Yeah, exactly.
We got you.
You're fun.
Yeah, it's been a struggle. It's been a struggle to the point where like brainstorming, like what can I do to build this community of others who are like me, so we can build each other up and support each other in the best ways possible. And I think something that capitalism does is think that it's about competition, that like if I do find other people like me who do the same kind of work, that it'll suddenly turn into competition as opposed to community. Something I'm struggling with currently right now is building community, because I've tried and it's failing. At the moment, it'll probably be success. We'll talk in a year. Totally. But what I've gained, though, identifying as an immigrant artist, I think someone said this before, is finding my authenticity and being able to walk into rooms just being myself. And that's definitely what I've gained, identifying as that and reconnecting to my roots and, where I'm from.
Thank you. I think you're speaking very clearly about the challenges of being first, right? Yeah. But think about the people that will come after you, because you are doing all of this. And I was, thinking about the panel, and Darius mentioned one question that he was interested in was, what do we tell immigrant artists and immigrant youth who define themselves as artists? And I was thinking to myself, wow, if I had had a Carlo, a Montserrat, a Darius, and a Rocio, where would I be? Right?
Yeah. I would love have to meet me right now when I was 20.
Like, definitely would be nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
How long it took to get here and to feel, it's
yeah.
But I really love the idea of the superpower. Mm-hmm. I think that, for example, I didn't create a logo or a new name for my company. I want people to struggle saying my name. Montserrat. I don't want to have a Starbucks name anymore. I want to keep trying. Well, after the pandemic, we give 2 kisses and a hug in Chile. I don't want you to take that from me. That is my superpower. My superpower is also inviting you to my home and cook for you, which I know that is not common. And I think that also, first of all, it makes me think a lot about that. I just realized now, even though in my country there are many kind of famous political artists, calling myself an artist has been a struggle, because I thought that artists, I don't know, maybe were the ones that you see in the museum, right? And I also, there was a moment that I thought about when we were talking about immigration and what are the things that we make and the resilience. I think that there is also this sense that sometimes I regret, that is like, we can start again anytime, any moment, no matter what. And also we can create a light for the theater from a can of beans. We can create these amazing works of art with upcycled materials. There is a kind of way of thinking that is also superpower.
Yeah, there's an incredible resilience, right? Because to exist and thrive as an immigrant, you have to be resilient and you have to be creative. Like, I look at my mom And she's easily the most creative person I've ever seen, because there's never a problem that she can't come up with a solution. But that's the perfect segue. We're moving into the last 20 minutes, and we've talked about the personal experiences. And so I'd love to hear from all of you about, why is this representation important? And as artists, what is our role in the current political climate as immigrant artists? Is there a role? What are we doing?
I can start. Okay, I will start. Okay, the way that I'm going to start is telling you guys about the 3 projects that I'm very kind of obsessed about. The first one is called Mujeres as Teachers, and actually started a little bit before the pandemic, when I realized that speaking Spanish was a crime. And we saw a lot of news of people saying, we speak English. This is the country where you speak English. So I was like, you know what? There is people that is charging almost $50 to teach you to embroider. That is not fair. So, and I remember embroidering as a kind of talking moment, having your tecito, tu cerveza, talking with friends. And I found this amazing place in Brooklyn called Café con Libros, which is a feminist, Black-owned independent bookstore. And I was like, I want to rent that space and offer a kind of pay what you can embroidery workshop for only women that speak Spanish or Spanglish. So the idea was create a community. And right now we are doing that online. And the part of line is that it has been amazing to discover that are other immigrants that speak Spanish in different parts of the world. And there are, that we have the same struggles, immigrants, women immigrants, and that we are trying to keep our language. And that is something. Then the other project that I'm doing is Mind the Pap, which is actually touched very close to my heart. I found out that a friend has cervical cancer, and that it can be prevented by going to do your pap smear test. And as many Latinas, maybe I was never educated about sexual care, sexual education. My parents give me a book and say, read it. So what I do is that I invite everyone to make panties out of pieces of fabric, undies, and remember that nurses have seen everything and there is no shame on going there. And also we are trying to put all the information about what they do in the pap smear test, how long does it take, you have your rights to ask certain things, etc. And with La Mordida project, actually, I want to read the description because I always mess up with La Mordida. It's a multimedia poetic journey from the unconscious to conscious through the investigation of the neuropsychology and the visual representation of the post-traumatic, the PTSD of the artist. So here is a piece. And I think that there is a different way of talking about trauma and how trauma also is connected with our life experiences. And yeah, I feel that I just put myself naked in front of all of them. But
thank you for that. Yeah. And you're talking, I mean, it's really interesting because you're talking about dealing with inequities in healthcare, which I think by now a lot of us know in reproductive health, it's a real issue, how BIPOC women suffer from a lot of racism, inequities that exist within the system. So it's no small feat to do what you're doing. And also talking about preserving our culture and preserving our identity without shame by preserving our language. So thank you. Who'd like to go next?
I'll go. I think as an artist, first generation immigrant artist, I think it's really important to put our work and our voices out there to feed and nourish and heal the next generation. Like you said before, I was kind of the first, and I didn't even think it was possible because I had no one to look up to or to talk about this thing that I was trying to do. You know, I'm thankful for a woman that I went to school with who was one of my professors saying to me, like, you can do this. You should do this. You know, if it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't have even tried. So I'm really thankful to that. But I didn't have that representation to even think or fathom that it was even possible for me, for a dark-skinned Dominican girl like me, to be able to do it. And just to go back, I have a podcast, which I think is really important, Rocio Mercedes, Amplifying the Afro and Afro-Dominican, where we specifically talk about and try to highlight as many Afro-Dominicans as we can find, what they're doing for their communities, how they contribute, and amplifying their voices so that hopefully people could see themselves reflected in the guests that we have. For example, we've had a historian come on to talk about the history of Dominican Republic, which I didn't even know about. And I was really ashamed that I didn't know about all of this history from the place that I was from, to help educate and give enlightenment to not just Dominicans, but other, you know, Americans too, or whoever is listening. We purposely had someone in the healthcare system talk about how she contributes, and you know, she's an activist in healthcare rights. So we try to highlight as many people as we can so people can see themselves reflected and know that anything is possible for them. And I think as artists, it's really important for us as immigrant artists, as Black artists, as Latina, you know, Latinx artists, that we help heal and inspire whoever is going to take our place in the future. I think that's our responsibility.
Thank you. Absolutely. Carlo, I think you were gonna say something.
Yeah, I'm really glad that Montserrat and Rocio both brought up trauma and healing, because I think that it's central to what I think our role is in this moment. You know, years ago I wrote a solo show about my experience as an undocumented immigrant, and it was the first time that I was like, it was like coming out. You know, I was like coming out because I never talked about it. I never, ever talked about it until I wrote that show and like publicly was like, hey, I used to be undocumented when I was a child, and like this was the experience. And I believed very strongly at the time, and was told by several people that saw the show, they were like, if only we could like talk about our experiences and be open about our stories. Like if only everybody could see this, then they would understand. Like it could like change minds. And the last several years politically has maybe put a damper on my optimism in that belief. However, I still think that to some degree that is true, and I also think that there's an entire generation of children right now who are gonna grow up with a lot of trauma, a lot of trauma that they're never gonna. I mean, like, you know, several of us were saying earlier, it never goes away. No matter how successful you are, no matter how happy and what a great life you have, that will always be with you. You carry it with you all the time. And I think that I think that that's part of a role right now. And it's going to be really, really important in the future, in like 10 or 20 years. It's going to affect generations. And I think that's really important to keep in mind. And I mean, like my ideal, like the place that I would like to get to, uh, is a place where that question, why did you come to the United States, is not a question. It's not a question. I've been asked that so many times. Like whenever I've told people, I was born in Ecuador, we came here, or when I did my show, when I didn't address that question, I just, mentioned like we moved here and then the story took off from there. But inevitably, like I would always get the like, but why did you move here? Like, why did you leave? And, early on, I would like try to answer it as best as I could. But, it always sticks with me. Like, why does it matter?
Mhm.
It's like the little girl said at the end of the show, because I wanted to arrive. Like, I just wanted to be here. It doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter. I shouldn't have to qualify to be allowed to like have a better life. It should be an option for everyone. And so, that's the goal. I think I don't know that we'll get there, but it's something to reach for,
Well, progress is not linear,
True.
and we're out here throwing curves. So yes. Dowdies, I want you to have a chance to speak on that question.
Cool. I mean, I think me just starting out my career now, a lot of the reason why I'm doing the work that I'm doing is so that I can inspire others. I mean, we were talking about it earlier, where it's like we don't kind of see ourselves represented. So I think for me, it is important to tell our stories. It is important to kind of see ourselves represented, because it gives us hope for the future. It gives us hope to believe that we do exist in this world and that we can live like to our fullest potential. So I think for me, I personally just want to inspire the next generation to have a space where they can just live authentically. Yeah, just growing up, I never had anybody that I necessarily like look into galleries or look into art spaces where only till like actually like recently have I felt represented. But as a young kid, I think thinking about it now, if I was like 5, 6, 7, even 10, like I would want to go into a museum and kind of see my culture represented. And I think for me now, I'm trying to put in the hard work so that I can be that representation for the next generation. Yeah.
Thank you. So we're almost at time, and I want to be respectful of your Friday night, but I'd love if you could put in the chat. I know, Monse, you have your Etsy store. Rocio, if you could put the podcast on there, whatever you want to share with those wonderful folks who tuned in tonight. I think it's important going back to community. And as we were talking, I jotted a few things down: imposter syndrome, assimilation, English, representation, Don Francisco, if you know, you know. American dream, don't speak Spanish, home. And I think that I want to thank all of you, because I think what you're doing, it's so important, because you're redefining a lot of those things, what they are, challenging them, and toppling them. So thank you for that, because you're helping our society all of us just become more humane. And
thank you. I really like what Carlos say. I think that maybe in the future, it's not because we are going to be superheroes, but there is not going to be niños perdidos that much. They're going to have places to look at.
Yes, that was beautiful. I feel like that's the perfect place to end. I'll come back to that quote. I wanted to say, going back to something Carlos said, in the panel of brilliant women last night, one of them said, immigration policy experts, one of them said that something to the effect of our society is obsessed with punishment. And so this idea of why did you come is to see if the answer is right or not, right? And everything, all of these questions we get asked, it's in order to put us in a category where we are either punished or rewarded. And so thank you for that, because I think that this kind of conversation is what allows us to reframe how we look at things that we might take for granted. Even a question like that, where is it coming from? What is it rooted in? So thank you for that. Much gratitude to all. We'll get these links out to y'all. It sounds like I can see that you're not seeing them, but we'll get a way to get you in contact and in community with Dauris, Carlo, Rocio, and Montserrat. Thank you, everybody. Any last words?
Thank you.
Yeah, just
Thank you. It was so nice talking and getting to know everyone. Really.
Yes.
Yeah, it is a privilege to be here right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No más niños perdidos.
No, I see you.
Yes. And Rocio, we're in community now, y'all. Have a good night. Thank you, everybody.
Abrazos.
And more to come.
Yes.
Yes.
Cariño.
Gracias. Chao, chao.
Bye-bye.